everybody. Welcome back to the BSB Bookathon. This is Love and with an ellipsis, which I hoped would be about our love of punctuation and grammar. But alas, it's about writing other plot arcs to go in our romance novels. I'm Barbara Ann Wright. I'll be your moderator, and I get to grill this lovely selection of panelists, which you can see around everywhere. And first up, I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves as they answer the question, besides romance, what plot elements or genres appear in your work? And we are going to pick on Amanda Radley first.
Thanks very much. Okay, so I think besides romance, for me, I've written a couple of mystery novels, but for my sort of romantic novels, I would say I quite often write comedy as well. And I don't necessarily like the term, but women's fiction or chick lit or book club fiction, it's basically fiction. It's a story about someone's life, usually a woman. And there's a romance arc in there as well. And my last novel that came out was Humbug, which you could just see there. And my next release is Reading Her, which comes out in February.
Awesome. I don't know if you want me to call you M today, M Ullrich, or if you're...
M works. That works
Yes.
for me.
All right.
Yeah. So I'm from Jersey all my life, born and raised. And I have now 10 published novels with Bold Strokes. My most recent is Holiday Wishes and Mistletoe Kisses. And other than romance, which really is what drew me into writing in the first place and reading in general, I would say like a general fiction genre. I've done a little bit of like a intrigue thriller in there, and a little suspense I've dabbled in, and yeah, and now what I'm working on has a little touch of like a supernatural element. So I kind of, ever since I started writing, I like to really throw in like that subgenre and like a variety. I kind of want to try a little bit of everything.
Cool. Vali.
I have, I can't remember. I think it's 31, maybe. I'm not sure. But anyway, I like murder. It's one of my favorite things. So romantic intrigue. I like, I've written mystery. I've written romance. I have written, I guess a little bit of vampire, werewolf kind of things.
Paranormal murder.
And then we murdered a lot of people in that too. It was like
Murder.
it was a little bit more well, it was paranormal, but like my take on paranormal, I guess. So it's kind of, all of it is kind of centers around a romantic
Murder.
Yeah.
Murder.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Lawyer, please, for Vali. Kadyan, what about you?
For me, I've been, I'm French, so you will hear about with my accent. I've only one book in English with BSB, The Secrets of Willow, but I have written 15 books in French. Usually I write historical gender books, but I can write thriller, science fiction, fantastic, and I quite like a lot of things, but fantasy. Fantasy is not my thing. So
No.
it depends, but a lot of people like fantasy, but I cannot. But I like werewolf and historical novels are my thing, I think.
Well, next you have to write a werewolf historical novel, I think would be.
I already wrote a werewolf one, but in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Oh, no, one in the past, so you can have a set.
Yeah, I can try that.
Fiona, Wright.
We just listened to her for the rest of the.
Absolutely.
Fiona Riley.
So I write contemporary lesbian romance. It's definitely something I enjoy writing. What I try to add to the stories is some sort of usually a goal-oriented like job thing. So the one I'm reading from, or the one we're working on, talking about this weekend, is Beginner's Bet, and that was focused on a high-stakes real estate firm, a luxury real estate firm. So for me, that happens in the background. So whenever there's a romantic arc, someone's career path or someone's job typically overlaps with it, because life happens, as you're falling in love or as you're meeting someone. So in my instance, it takes place around this one particular real estate firm, and then all the things that happen, deals happening, falling apart, bets going on, all these things that are going on in addition to happen as well. So for me, it's romance, and it's also some sort of a career obligation or success or failure that, changes the way they interact with each other, or promotes or, changes the way they have their romantic arc.
I thought you were going to say lots of sex to go along with Allie's lots of murder.
Well, I am the queen of steam, so I can't lie about that.
Yes.
I put that on the chat list.
I know. You need a tiara.
I could get a tiara. I would do that. I might be more of a sash person, but
I don't know what it is with you people who don't have tiaras. I own like 6. You do not have just one, but Julie Tizard.
Hi. I write, in addition to romance, action adventure novels, mainly because that's what I like to read. And I usually include some aviation aspect, because that's where most of my background is, as a pilot for 40 years. But my newest book, which I happen to have right here, Free Fall at Angel Creek, is a mystery. So that's kind of a new a departure for me. And I'm interested in exploring more of that. And I also have some other genres down the road in mind, a science fiction trilogy and another series.
Awesome. And I'd like to say that yesterday, Julie was a little late for a panel because she was polishing her airplane, which is the best and only excuse I will accept from now on. Okay, now we're going to jump right into how do we do the things. And I'm going to ask my panelists, do you plot your romance arcs and these other arcs you're talking about separately? And if you're a pantser instead of a plotter, how do you know to switch between your romance and your other arc? Or do you bother to try? Or does it all just come flowing out of you naturally and you wouldn't know how to explain it? And we are going to go to Fiona first because she looks the most confused.
I was worried about when you said things that come flowing out of me that I can't explain. I was like, I can explain a lot of things that come flowing out of me, but if you and I are different people, that's all right.
It's love and whatever we want it to be.
It's love and ellipses. So for me, I always, these last 3 books, especially in a series, I do plot. I'm also wearing pants, but that's a separate issue. I do plot, and I plot out 3 books in advance, so I know what's going to happen kind of as we're going if it's a series. In this book, because one of the characters is a real estate agent and the other character is actually selling her home, and there's something that happens to the house that puts in jeopardy the sale. So for me, I had to make sure that I wrote the arc around what was happening. So around the sale of the home, since one of them is a representative of the other for the sale of the house. So the romance arc is directly related to what's happening in this book. There's a fire and the house nearly doesn't get to where it needs to go. So I need that fire to happen for this romantic arc to kind of also grow. So for me, they happened at the same time. I wrote them at the same time.
Okay, cool. Allie.
I remember going to the first GCLS, which was in New Orleans, and I think it was one of the editors from Bold Strokes was talking about story arcs and all this stuff you had to write down, and I was sitting in the audience going, oh, I'm in such trouble. I don't do any of that.
Post-its.
So, I'm a total pantser, and I have a huge collection of pens and a huge collection of notebooks, and especially little notebooks. So I guess what I do is I write a 1-sentence description of every chapter that I've written, and then every once in a while I do have to go back and read it just to make sure, I haven't slipped off and to the voices in my head, and it still makes sense. So I don't really plan anything. And then every once in a while, by going back and I figure out I've left some threads undone. So I'll have to go back either to edit or to add in something else to kind of smooth those unlinked links back together. So that's how I do it.
I didn't mean this, but I'm happy that we started with the two polar opposite approaches there, the planning everything thoroughly and the tripping over a career and just suddenly having like 30 books out. So it just goes to show you can do it any way you want to, folks.
I mean, I think we should be worried that Allie doesn't plan and she kills all these people in her novel. She just like thinks it out on a whim. Like Tiz not even like premeditated. She's just like, I'm going to murder you with a wood chipper, and that's just going to happen today.
They say that most serial killers operate like that. If they're really just whimmy as hell and they don't actually plot anything, they're just sort of like, you could be dead. Yeah.
Your day.
Yeah. Julie.
My first book, The Road to Wings, I wrote a very detailed outline of that. And I did that in kind of a visual sense. I had the storyline of each main character and then also the situation, and they kind of wove together. And that's actually a formation maneuver called weave. So that's kind of how I visualized it. My second book, I didn't really write an outline, but I had it kind of visualized in my head. So that was how I proceeded with that one. And then my newest one, since it's a mystery, I did kind of have to plot that out so that these loose ends wouldn't be dangling. So I do a little mix of both.
Awesome. And I would like to remind people that if they do have any questions, please put those in the Q&A box instead of the chat thingy, because I'm not really paying attention to what our panelists are over there doing. So Kadyan, how about you? How do you plot your arcs?
I don't really plot. I mean, I'm a pencil. Usually I intertwine everything. And, when I write a book, I can start at the beginning or at the end or in the middle. It doesn't matter. It just, I write what the idea I have. And when I walk my dog, I have many ideas in my head, and I come back home and write the scene. And after I go back at the beginning, at the end, I reread it. And so the main problem with that is sometimes I have blue eyes in the beginning and green eyes later. But when I reread everything, it's okay. It's not so easy, but I like it this way. But it's difficult for my beta readers because they have to wait. I finish the book to read. And but I can do also from the beginning to the end, but it's more complicated for me.
Okay, cool. How about M, which stands for Madam? Oh, you're muted. It also stands for muted.
My dog was barking and I panicked. I was like, mute, and then I forgot that I did it. I have done a little bit of both, actually. I really like to plot, but I have noticed that the more books I write, the less I start to plot. But when it came to certain storylines, like my book, Time Will Tell, that dealt with time travel and going back and sort of fixing the wrongs in the one character's life. And that required planning for that plot line all on its own to make sure that I stayed on track and did not mess any of that up. But with like Holiday Wishes and Mistletoe Kisses, the focus is on relationships, not just romantic, but friendships and family. And that all just sort of was told at the same time through as I wrote it. So I've done a little bit of both depending on the storyline and what's needed.
Oh, cool. Amanda.
I like to say I'm a plotter, but I lost my mind a little bit recently and started pantsing and then realizing that I really shouldn't do that. So I have deep respect for those who can be a pantser, but I can't. And when it comes to the two different arcs, I plot them together. My stories are all about the reader's parachuted into the middle of this person's life, and then we go in a linear fashion. So whatever's happening is happening. So I plot the two different story arcs at the same time, the romance and whatever else is happening. I kind of keep an eye on them both as like proper arcs to ensure they have everything they need. And like, I'm not missing one at one point of time. And I don't know. I'm just very lucky when I plot, I can fold them in together. There is occasionally that I'm a bit like, oh, I'm just too much in the romance arc now, and people are going to be wondering what's happening with the rest of the story. Or I kind of forget that I'm writing a romance, and then I think I better go back and put that bit in. So yeah, it's better when I plot. As I say, like the last couple of books, I started pantsing, and now I'm going full on back into it. Like I've got my post-it notes, and it's going to be really plotted out.
Nice. So what I'm hearing though is none of you people should really work together on anything because you'd alley-valley each other. So let's go with what attracted you to the other elements that you put in your stories besides romance. And for the murder, mystery, thriller people, what made you first look at your life and think, I could come up with really creative ways to kill people? So let's start. Where are we going to start? We're going to start with Madam Ullrich. Which am I saying that right? Which way is it said?
Ullrich. It's
Ullrich.
very German at the end. Yeah, you
Okay.
really got to get into it. Well, for example, with Against All Odds that I wrote with Chris Bryant and Maggie Cummings, I wrote the sociopath, the guy who killed a bunch of people to win back the love of his life. And that was so, Allie, it's fun. It's fun to kill people.
Flowers. It just beats flowers.
Like, it's really so fun. And I really took a dive into that world and had a lot of fun with just like stepping into this dark mind and getting creative with it. And I had quite a few people that were like, are you okay? Are you okay? Like, I just read your last book. That was cute. What happened to you? But as far as like all the other ones, you know, like I said, I'd like to do like a different variety of stuff. And it's really like time travel. What's not to absolutely love about that idea, the general idea of if you could, would you go back and fix something? So when it comes to developing them and what I'm drawn to, I think it really boils down to the heart of the plot and what these characters stand for, what their backstory is, who they are as people, and then taking it from there. Maybe I'll kill some more people because, like I said, that's a good time.
Yeah.
It's
Awesome. Several lawyers needed in here. Kadyan.
I'm going to speak about the Secrets of Willow. It's in Australia, and I started this book when I visited Australia 20 years ago. And of course, I went to the convict museum, and I wanted to make a romance about some woman convict and something like that. And so I started to read books about Australia and everything. And I realized that I couldn't use a convict because at the time of the convict, nobody went inside the Red Center, and the Red Center was so fascinated. I wanted my characters to go there. So I changed the historical milestone I used, and I plot my story in the beginning of the 20th century. And as I wrote it, it became a family saga. I don't know why. I mean, I have no kids, but I wanted to write a family saga with 3 generations of women and how to have children depending on the time you live in. And I use the Great Depression, the World War II, and all this thing. And I did a lot of research. And Willow is a ship station, and that was so fascinating that, yeah, I love it. And I wrote another book about Australia, and I'm still maybe not finished with this part of my writing.
It doesn't sound like it, but I'm sure people are looking for more stories from there.
Yeah, I mean, I have one, and I'm starting to translate it. So maybe soon.
Is that as long and tedious a process as I'm imagining it, translating something the size of a novel?
I use some translator online, And after I correct it, and my wife is better than me in writing English, so she can correct it as well. And of course, there's the editing process of BSB, who is helping a lot.
Yeah. Amanda.
I kind of take an idea for a story that I want to write, and everything comes from there. And the idea for the story is often as far removed as you can possibly get from a romance arc. I must just not like myself, but some of the like the themes behind my stories in the past have been, you know, anything from like a road trip or amnesia to homelessness and suicide, or something like a fear of heights or something like that. And it's just, I have a sort of nugget of an idea, and suddenly I'm like, okay, I need to weave a romance into this. You know, someone's going to lose a member of their family, or hey, we're at a theme park now, or on a cruise ship. I don't know, it's whatever sort of takes my fancy at that time, and I fold them in together. And when I'm writing mysteries, I'm British. We love a little quirky village somewhere with the death rate of a nuclear apocalypse, but still with cream tea.
I've noticed that about British TV. Yeah, that more people die in these tiny villages than in London every year.
Absolutely. I mean, you hear about knife crime in London, it's nothing compared to like a tiny village in Oxfordshire. And it's just, and I know it's so weird, but you know, quite a lot of people, they like true crime, they like Valley novels, they like mysteries and murder and things like that. And you know, it's odd, but you know, cozy mystery, which is predominantly what I write when I write mystery, you know, it's cozy murder. I don't know, but we like it, and it's one of those things. So I think that's the British part of me, because I've written nearly 25 novels, and 2 of them have been mysteries. But every now and then I just have to kill someone. You've just got to do it. So I
it's fun.
It is fun.
That's the most violent panel I've ever been on.
Yes.
Yeah,
all of these people have retained a lawyer, so don't even think about it. Those of you in
it's
the
fun to
audience.
kill people. Yeah,
Yes.
I agree.
So
I like to do it.
We figured out what goes after the ellipsis.
Love
Finally,
and
it's murder. Yes. Which sounds like could be the title of any of your next books. So, Julie.
Well, I think I've always been attracted to things that some people might consider dangerous. So things that are kind of life and death situations, and how characters are meet in a life and death situation, how they're transformed by that. That's something that really interests me, and that I'm interested in writing about.
All right, cool. Fiona, who's giving us a tour of her house.
I know. My littles are having snacks. I'm making sure no one chokes. You know, look, I got my Valentine decorations up though. Do you see that? It's all about love, which is what I'm about. I'm not about homicide. I'm about love. So for me, as I do kind of do Amanda's routine. If I find an idea, when I was writing Beginner's Bet, I knew I wanted to write about the high stakes real estate in Boston, which is cutthroat and just so interesting and dramatic and excessive and flamboyant, you know, like Allie. And and then right now I'm writing a book I really wanted to write a book about great white shark researchers, because we have a lot of sharks where I am, and I'm very interested in sharks. So for me, it's a matter of finding something that interests me, and then like I'm going to just jump on that, like a cruise ship or, you know, or a matchmaking thing or something, or I probably not going to go into the homicide. And I've also never heard the term cozy murder, which makes me very happy, because it makes it feel like it's just so much less homicidal than it actually is.
It's the same amount of homicide. It's just quirky, so it's lovable and fun. So like instead of somebody getting instead of somebody gets stabbed with a knife, they get stabbed with an ancient sickle or something, so that you're like, oh, it's cute.
Like a knitting needle, needle, like grandma's making a I got it.
Absolutely, yes, you got it. Also, I've got to point out that I don't do murders. It's exactly the thing a murderer would say, as opposed to all these people saying,
thinking it.
I did a thing. Yes.
I would never murder anybody.
Can I point out, though, that the only person on this panel who's tried to kill me is Barbara Ann Wright.
And I haven't commented on whether I murder or not.
That's right. There was a lot of blood. I was there.
And
I saw it.
I have 8 stitches
me too.
in my head to prove that to be true.
Yes. I'll get you yet, Scooby-Doo. All right. And it's your turn to answer the question, Ali Valley.
Let's see. I got some books for Christmas one year, and up to then I wrote grants and memos, and I thought, if this lady could do it, maybe I can. So I sat down and, and I wrote a book, which I thought turned out pretty good. And then I turned it into BSB, and I got a call from Rad. And so I was like, I think I was the second person signed by Bold Strokes. And she said, we love everything about this book, but we got to change everything about it. And then do you have anything else? And I said, and I had written, that's right, I was talking about this yesterday, and I said, we were talking about secondary characters. And I said, I started writing a story for myself because I didn't find anything in the genre. So I started writing a book about a character named Rumi Hatibon. And there was a secondary character that kind of stumbled into the story, and I fell in love with this character. So we put Remy to the side for a little while, and I introduced the world to Derby King Casey. So that is where, so the Devil series was really supposed to be about 2 books. And, you know, my partner said, no one will ever read this because it's way too violent.
Thank you for your support.
Anything. She knows nothing.
Really? Yeah, no, she looks at me sometimes. It's like, you really need some mental health. Our conversations at dinner, sometimes when we're out in restaurants, really does. People will look at us funny because it's like, what do you think about this? And then, so, because it's like, it's so boring just to either stab someone or shoot them. So I try to find interesting ways to do it.
Yeah, spice it up, man.
Yeah, so.
I'm imagining that right now, and just you at dinner, like, do you think I'd kill somebody with this?
Exactly.
Yes.
So now the pressure washer thing came in because one day I was out pressure washing, and Carolyn was like, look, there's a bunch of bugs on the car, can you knock them off? And I said, you know, these things are pretty powerful. I don't want to knock the paint off. And she's like, well, just try, you know, stay far away. And then so I was pressure washing, and she was with a brush. And then so she went this way, I came this way, and I sliced right through her hand. So when it tells you that it will slice through skin, yes, it will.
Mm-hmm.
I hope somebody's calling someone for somebody.
It was a total accident. But and she was like, I wrapped a towel around her hand, and she's like, I really need to lie down. And I was like, well, okay. So I laid her down, and she's been, because I wanted to bring her to the hospital because, like I said, I felt horrible that it had happened. And but in the back of my mind, I was thinking like, I really need to write this.
Cha-ching!
My point, yeah.
Well, now you know why I tried to kill you. It was payback. I was hired to do so.
Self-preservation at this point, Barbara. Watch yourself.
That's really well. The first person who signed with Bold Strokes has already gone into hiding. So you know, if I'm going to move up the chain, I got to start. Oh dear! Oh dear! Oh dear! Okay, let's do another writing question. Do you usually wrap up your romance and other arcs at the same time, or do you tend to wrap up one before the other? Pretty much, which do you like to end with? And let's go with Julie for this one.
I think I usually try to resolve, like in my current book, resolve the mystery first. And then they've had relationship issues. And so the end of the book is actually when they are able to resolve those and live happily ever after. So I do tend to deal with a plane crash or whatever it is first, and then let them complete their romance.
Oh, nice. Amanda.
I'm so glad there's an entire ocean between me and Ali. I mean, to slightly feel safer. For me, I'll generally wrap up whatever the other part of the story is and end on the romance note, like Julie says. I generally might advertise my books as a romantic comedy or something like that, where something else happens. So, you know, to finish on the romance is probably the right way. But they will finish relatively close to one another. I try to get them relatively close. You don't want, the main part of the story to actually stop halfway and then, it to become a different book almost for the second half of the novel. So relatively close together, but I'll generally finish on the romance arc.
Fiona?
Yeah, I think there's usually something happening in addition to the romance to help the book move along. So, the home sale in this last book, whether or not the house was salvageable, can we sell it? What's going to be the outcome for that? It has to happen first. I also try to keep it, like Amanda said, kind of close to the end of that. You don't want to put too much time between when the issue becomes resolved and the relationship either flounders or doesn't, or someone gets killed or whatever. So in my case, I keep them pretty close. This book, we wrapped up one thing and we finished the other, but I almost always end with the romance because that's where the story is. So they go through this whole arc of relationship troubles or whatever that happens throughout, and then you finish with the frosting, the good stuff, right?
Next book better finish with literal frosting. Kadyan.
Well, usually I write everything at the same time, but I try to write the romance, the plot, and first. I mean, the part I like, the action, what is important, the nice part of the romance, and I complete what I don't like after. So the sex and things like that. I don't like to write it. So if someone like to write it, she's welcome to help me. But usually, yes, I write the action and the main part of the romance as I feel it. And I go back to the other small things later.
Okay, good. Allie.
Let's see. I committed the perfect horrible crime when writing a book, and in the first Devil book, no one got together. It was like, no. They're in love. Will they? Will they not? So I got a lot of mail about that. But I try to like they get together and then something happens, breaks them apart, and they get back together. So usually I wrap up whatever the crime or the plot is, and then the romance is what usually ends the book. The conclusion of that.
And what about you? Are you gonna say yes? We finish. Always the romance finishes.
The romance always finishes. Always, even if it's in an epilogue, even if the other part of the plot goes all the way up until the end and then the epilogue comes along, I'll always end on the romance. I feel like that's the sweet center that everybody is waiting for. So I like to end on it.
The frosting, as it were.
The frosting. I was going to say the creamy center, and then I was like, Fiona's going to steal this, and then it was going to turn into a whole thing again. So I stopped. I didn't say creamy center.
And I was going to stick Allie on you, and it was going to be mine. So
I don't know how you'd kill somebody with frosting. I suppose you could drown them in it.
Yeah.
I can think of something.
You can think of something. Yeah, I'm sure you could.
Yeah. To let you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a question from the audience. It's from Ann Shade. She wants to know, in a romantic intrigue, how far into the story do you think is reasonable to delve into the romance? So you romantic intrigue people, what do you think?
Well, like I said, I guess the Devil series is my best known romantic intrigue. The first book had some flashbacks, but not anything else. And then after that, so in the second book is where the romance really began. Well, at least gets started again, I should say. And it was probably into chapter 3. But since it's a series, it's it's established relationship. So I would say in some cases, and then in the mystery, which is the Calling series, that one didn't begin until probably at least past the 1/4 part of the book. So it just depends on the story and what the plot line is.
Who else writes romantic intrigue that wants to comment on that? Oh, Julie.
I think in my, actually all my books, the main characters couldn't have a romantic relationship for various reasons. And so I have to kind of drop little hints and things along the way, but I can't really get into a serious romance part, especially my newest book, because that is a mystery. And they're trying to work together. So there's like a professional line that they can't cross. So I have to kind of wait a little bit till I introduce the romantic stuff.
Nice. Anyone else who writes romantic intrigue?
And the romantic intrigue is, it depends on the book and it depends on the genre. I mean, if I write in the Secrets of Willow, I have 2 romantic intrigues because there's a great grandmother and the daughter. But in another books I wrote, sometimes the romance starts only in the book number 2 and not in book number 1, or sometimes it starts at the beginning of the book. It depends what I want the reader, I want the reader to feel. My new book is intrigue. The romantic intrigue starts almost at the beginning, but it slows down and start again later. So it's really, I mean, it really depends what is important, what the story is.
Yes, definitely. Anybody else like to comment there? Oh, no. We drove Julie away. All righty. Well, then let's move on to our next question. Where do you get the inspiration for plot ideas that aren't romance? I know Julie can answer this. If you've ever worked a job your character did or lived through something they've experienced, and if not, how did you research your non-romance plot? And I'm going to pick on Madame first for this one.
Madame.
Madame.
I think a lot of inspiration does come from like life, whether it's people you know and their occupations. I've never worked an occupation of my character that I could think of. There's been like dream occupations. In Love at Last Call, Barrett owns a fantastic gay bar. Dream of mine, dream of many, I'm sure, out there. So it's kind of like, I loved the research for that book because I went hard into mixology and looked up different drinks and like all that kind of stuff. That was such a fun book to write for that alone. And people were like, have you ever like worked a bar? I'm like, no. You've never been a barback? Look at me, I'm not a barback. But I think from people that I've known, shows and movies, you know, sometimes if I binge watch a lot of stuff, and it gets in my head a little bit. Like I would binge Criminal Minds all the time, and when I was writing Against All Odds, came in very handy. There was a very dark little voice that was like, I'm gonna help you out. So it comes from really, really anywhere, but I've never worked or really lived any of they all boiled down to research.
That sounds like an excuse you'd use for going on a weekend bender is I'm looking hard into mixology.
I had to taste all of these drinks. It was wild.
Had to do it all. Yeah. Yes.
I did in that book, there were 3 different types of mojitos. It was great.
One of my favorites.
I'm not a big drinker, but I love a good mojito. Oh.
Yes.
Yeah,
Julie, I know you part of your answer to this question already.
Yes, well, I'm kind of like, write what you know. So I write a lot about flying things, and but I try, one thing that's really important to me is to have a real sense of authenticity for the reader. And I hope that my books give the reader that in a sense of being immersed in, the situation with the characters. So, but I do have to do research. In my first book, I was writing about Air Force pilot training, which is something that I had gone through 35 years prior. So I had to go online and find the old flight manuals and look up some reference stuff. And then in my newest book, it's a mystery that involves an aircraft accident investigation. And I ended up referencing a bunch of real aircraft accidents and how they were kind of connected to that. So I did do some additional research on some real aircraft crashes.
But were you an investigator?
That I was one of my jobs in the Air Force. I was trained as an aircraft accident investigator, and I worked. It's called a Class A mishap with the KC-10. So and it was a great school. It's a very interdisciplinary type of thing, because you have to not only know about flying, but you have to know about metallurgy and weather and petrochemicals and all kinds of stuff. So it covers a lot of different things. But yeah, I did do that. It was always been fascinating.
Wow, that sounds intense. Kadyan, what about you?
Obviously, I'm not an Australian, and I don't work in a ship station, so no, I don't know anything about the work. The job I use in my books. And I wrote about pirates, and I'm not about Viking, and I'm not a Viking. So I do a lot of research, a lot of reading, and a lot of things, especially on internet. And I like to have the small little details who make the story real, feel real for the readers. So, example about Australia, I look for the prices of the bread and the salary in 1930s. So it's so I can give some small details and how to to fix a fence or something. And that I like to put in my novel, just something so the people can feel they live inside the book.
Well, see, that's what draws people to write fantasy. As you were saying earlier, we get to make stuff up. So it's like, I've never been a pirate, but I've never been a space pirate either, and I just get to make crap up. Allie.
Kaden walks her dog. I take a shower. And in my shower, I have a window and I look outside. I like to daydream while I take a shower. So that is where I get some of my ideas anyway.
Are there lots of murders taking place outside the window in your shower?
What kind of a shower is this?
Because, I think you should move. If that's the case.
But yeah, no, like I said, in some cases I do write stuff because it's something that I enjoy, like A Woman to Treasure. I love treasure hunts. As a kid, my brother and I, we would stay home from when it was summer vacation. And every day at around 3:00, they had this thing called the Big Movie. And it was, on NBC. And they had these theme weeks where, one week it was like Ma and Pa Kettle, and then Blondie, if anybody's old enough to remember that. But they also had like pirate movies or Tarzan movies. And as a kid, I read a lot, and like the Bermuda Triangle, fantasies about Atlantis. So those things just kind of fascinate me. So every once in a while, an idea will pop into my head, and I think that'll make a cool book. And so hopefully everyone else thinks so too. And then the other night I read from this new one, because I also like to take chances every once in a while and try to do something different. So I think Calumet was a little different. It was an established romance. Everybody thought, she's such an asshole because she's gonna break up the it's like, so it wasn't like they thought it was a second chance romance, and it really wasn't. So it was something. I went to my class reunion, and it's like my class, some of the people in my class are like what a lot of people describe as a train wreck. So it was, I took a lot of notes while I was there, and I think my favorite thing through the whole night was I don't remember those boobs. And it was like, that was my favorite line the whole night. So that's where that story came from.
That could also be the title of a book. Exactly. I don't know what the book would be about necessarily, but
so like I said, every once in a while, just to try something else. So after all the killing and everything, I decided to try something humorous through the whole book. So it's the writer's block is probably a lot different than anything I've ever written. And when I described it to my editor, like I said, said the other night she thought I was a creeper. And then she read it. She's like, well, yeah, no, this is actually pretty good. So we went from creeper to it's pretty good.
It sounds, I don't know, I can't stop thinking about, I don't recognize those boobs or whatever. It sounds like the world's worst pickup line of like, listen, baby, I have face
Hey.
blindness, but maybe I'll recognize other parts of you.
Blindness. So like I said, that was my favorite line the whole night. So I have another one coming up this year, so I'm trying to decide whether or not maybe I'll write a sequel if I go.
It sounded like it paid off for you, so why
I
not?
don't recognize those boobs too. Is that what?
As well. Or also, I also don't recognize those boobs. She just could go on and on and on and on. Boobs I haven't recognized, a memoir. Okay, Amanda, I don't remember what the question was, but what do you think?
Who cares anymore? Wow. I want to come to Ali's reunion. But I don't. But I do, but I don't. Yeah.
Just walk in boobs first, you'll be fine.
She'll be like, oh, hey, Amanda, we've never met in person. How did you? No.
I'm going to veer us back on track, but
Oh, okay, thank you.
just try to. Wasn't there something to do with inspiration?
It was where do you get to inspiration for the ideas that aren't romance? And if you've ever worked a job that one of your characters has, or how did you research it if you haven't?
Good job. You should be a moderator.
That's
Nothing as interesting as what's come before. I mean, a lot of mine are set in offices, and I've worked in offices. But then, as everyone else has said, I research. So if there's something that I want to write about, a location I've not been to, or a job I've not had, or I don't know anyone with that job, then I'll just do some research. I'm a big believer in that you can find everything online. But I think for realism, I generally try to keep everything to something that I know, because it's just easier for me. And once I go down the research sort of rabbit hole, it can be a long time. And then, you start researching one thing and then you see a video on something else. And then before you know it, you've got a new job and you're living somewhere else. And, it's just, it can be quite difficult to sort of keep on track. So I try to keep things in reality and in a reality that I know.
Fiona, you're the last one to answer this question, which is meander down a long and winding road.
I do write about things that interest me. So I like to research too. When I was writing the last book in the Match series, I wrote about a firefighter who does glass blowing. So I took a lot of glass blowing classes. I have a great interest, like I said before, in great white sharks. A friend of mine is a pilot, and I took a Cessna over, like they do shark watching, shark spotting. I was able to go up and fly with him. So all that stuff sort of really interests me. So I like to draw something that interests me into it. So the research is fun. And also I feel like I'm learning more about kind of things that already have something that intrigues me. I really am interested in real estate too. I'm really interested in like high finance, things like that, stuff that I see on my day to day. So when I base things, I typically base them where I am, like Boston. I know Megan said she's from Jersey and she does that kind of stuff. I like to base mine in my character of Boston and then kind of work around there, because I feel like there's so much I can bring to the story from things I've seen on my own. And even if I haven't really truly experienced everything, I can learn on and do that with the education and self-interest and doing internet work and things like that. But if I can try it myself, I try to dabble a little bit. I think that brings a little bit more depth to the character, and it gives me that unique experience of like destroying something in glass blowing because it's so hot I dropped it, even though I spent 5 hours working on it. That's an experience you should have. That failure is something you want to know.
Yikes. So with our last minute, I'm just going to ask everybody, which book are you particularly pushing right now? And if you have it, to please hold it up. And let's start with Madame.
Holiday Wishes and Mistletoe Kisses. It is a collection of holiday romance novellas that tie together.
All righty. Julie, I noticed you had yours. You did the homework. Oh, you're muted, Julie.
There we go. Yes, this is my new book, Free Fall at Angel Creek. It is a mystery that involves an aircraft accident investigation.
Awesome. Fiona.
This is the last book in my high stakes romance series. It's called Beginner's Bet. And it came out in September, and it was a fun book to write.
Amanda.
Humbug, which came out in December. It's a Christmas book. It's where Christmas girl meets someone who's an absolute humbug.
Kadyan.
The Secrets of Willow, a family saga in Australia in the 20th century.
Ali. What is this crap?
What is that? That's not a book, Allie.
I don't have it yet. Well,
Now it's off there still.
I done
yeah,
count.
there you go.
There you go.
Writer's Block. It should come out I think in May of this year. So.
Where people probably get killed with blocks. All right. I want to say thank you to all my lovely panelists, and stay tuned. We've got more Bold Strokes Bookathon action coming up. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks, Barbara.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
Barbara.
you.
Thank you.